So 2024 was a year to remember. We started seeing prices jump up, we saw them decline, we saw multiple offers, and we saw a lot of conditions. We saw everything happen this year in the market. And so what we did is we gathered 5 of our agents on our team to talk about what has happened and what we expect to happen in 2025. So buckle in. This is a longer video, but I know it's going to be worth it. And feel free to jump around in the chapters that we've sectioned out for you as well. So go ahead, enjoy, and we'll see you through the video. So with interest rates dropping, so we're walking into like tomorrow, they're going to do a rate announcement. And this morning I looked and the stats were saying that there's a 90% chance we'll still have a 0.5% drop. And so even with all the other news that came out, right? So with all of that, how is interest rates dropping? Like if someone's thinking of purchasing and they kind of have a hesitation, like, should I wait to buy because it's going to get cheaper or interest rates are dropping? Should I just keep on waiting? Is that the right way to think about it? Like, what is the right time to act, could you say?
I think that we still have very low inventory. And so I think making a plan is probably your best bet. And it depends. We're talking, our city is the size of New York and we don't have the density. So each quadrant has its own, flow to it. But I think waiting for an interest rate change, I think you're better off to start looking and keep checking in with your mortgage broker in regards to rate.
I don't think you wait because you might miss the home that you want, right? So, and a lot of mortgage brokers always say you're not marrying the rate, you're marrying the home sort of thing. So keep your options open. In worst case scenario, you go on a variable rate, which most people are afraid of. And do you end up being able to lock it in down the road if it continues to drop? And if something does come along, you grab the home. If it doesn't, then your rate changes for lower and you're set there, but you're not missing out on something. So
I think one thing that a lot of people also forget is when we're in a dropping interest rate world, you can get out of your rate, right? Pay the penalties. And like, let's say a year ago, if you were getting a mortgage and it was what, high fives, 5.8?
No, sometimes 6.2.
6.2, okay.
6.5, I think I had
So if you're locking in at a high 5, low 6s, and now you're looking at it and it's like 4.5 or whatever the number is, like that cost of paying out your penalty, it could be gone within a year. And now you're in 5 years of better interest rates. And so you could be actually saving $3, $4, $5, whatever, $1,000 over the next 4 or 5 years by actually doing that. So I think a part of it too is even if someone finds that home right now, and for whatever reason, interest rates do drop another % or 2, which is a lot, but going into the next 2 or 3 years, you could always still refinance, pay a penalty, and it still might be worth it. So again, it goes to your point of being able to get the right property versus waiting for that right rate, right?
I always think it's a little bit dangerous to wait. Like, kind of getting back to what you said, Matt, if you're ready to go, emotionally set, and you have the money and you're just waiting for that house to come up, I don't know if it makes a lot of sense to be, well, there's an interest rate reduction probably coming, I'm going to sit on the sidelines until that kicks in. There's products out there for a mortgage that you can take advantage of any potential future interest rate drop. Anybody that's ever tried to time the market usually ends up regretting that decision, whether it's, when's the best time to sell, that kind of thing, or I want to wait until all the conditions are perfect. You tend to end up missing the boat a little bit. So I think if you're in the position where you have everything good to go and the interest rate is your concern, I don't think that should be what prevents you from making a jump, because it could end up costing you more in the end.
I think where people end up getting confused too is they mix trying to time a market because it's like an investment, but it's their own personal house. So the problem with that is you end up having a lot of personality or personal issues or feelings and emotions that get caught into trying to time the market, where there are a few there's a few comments that I've seen on YouTube where people are saying, I did this, I bought here, I sold here, did this, and they're making these comments, and you look back and you're like, yeah, actually you timed the market, like you did pretty good. However, it was never their personal house, from what I can understand or see. So they're looking at it from a much different perspective. So I wonder if there's something to do with trying to time it with your personal house versus an investment property, where it's just like, let's throw it on, sell it with a tenant, or let's just buy something and rent it out. Like that type of mentality could be completely different too, right?
Well, investors have zero emotional investment, pardon the term, in that transaction. They're looking to make sure the numbers work. In that sense, maybe it does make sense. But even then, there's still products out there that the interest rate shouldn't be that defining factor, right? Yeah. I think if you come across the right property, if you're ready to go, you're ready to go. I don't think that should be your big concern. And there's other factors too. Like we don't know what's going to be happening even 6 months from now, right? Like it's interesting to think about the natural cycle that we've seen the last 2 years of the people that migrate to Alberta. It makes sense that they come in the spring, especially if they're families, because they want to be settled and ready to go at the end of summer for the school year. And it makes sense that that drops off at this time of year, because who wants to do that in the winter and start mid-school year, right? So those things make sense. But like, who knows where we're going to be in 6 months? We have a lot of volatility that's happening in our markets, in our financial system, politically, like wars, like there's all kinds of other influences that could determine where we end up going in the next 6 months. And I think right now, like we look at the numbers, we look at the last couple of years, we hypothesize, okay, based on those kind of things, and this is kind of what we're feeling right now, this is what we think might happen. There's going to be a lot of things that change in the next month or two that could throw everything into chaos. So it's really tough to sit here right now and go, well, this spring's going to be awesome like it was last year, or half of what it was, or it's going to be terrible. We just don't know at this point.
So how are layoffs impacting home prices? Because we're seeing more unemployment. Like it's such a big news headline, right? The media is using, and the unemployment is out there. So how are layoffs in the future of this next year? How are unemployment? How are you seeing that being impacted at all in the market?
I think it's typical, like with Alberta market, right? We always go through those phases. So I think the layoffs are going to be in the higher salary companies, where we're going to see maybe the higher end stuff start to drop because all of a sudden they can't afford. And, you know, it's typical there. All buy their toys and get their fancy home and stuff. And next thing you know, they don't have a job anymore. So I think we might see a little more on the market for the, you know, maybe 1.2 million mark and up may come up if those people are still getting laid off. But at the end of the day, the market that's always the busiest is the lower end stuff, you know, under 500, 600,000.
Yeah, but usually when someone's getting laid off, their house is the last thing to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to be.
They'll have.
And lots of it's been interesting because it's in talking to just some past clients again, after doing it for 20 years, there's a lot of people that, you know, I like to call and connect with at this time of year. And I mean, they were laid off, but they have really big packages. And so they're using it as kind of a reset time. So, you know, I don't think that is indicative of changing the market. Though the two individuals I'm thinking of would have maybe moved had they still been working.
Yeah.
But now, you know, this has just given them a breath and something, you know, to pause. Plus the market has been their inventory has been so tight that I think buyers have gotten fatigued if they haven't found something right away and they've just stepped out of the market.
Yeah.
Like, so there's just a multitude of factors.
And people are always so driven to what media is telling you. Like there's always more to it. So they hear of layoffs, everyone gets scared and no one wants to do anything, thinking, you know, they may be laid off even though their job is probably secured stuff. So
yeah. Well, even the high unemployment rate, I think we have to remember there's more people. So the same reason we have so many more sales. Like if you look at the last couple of months of sales, that's as high or higher than the peak of spring sales, like pre-COVID, right? And so we have just that many more transactions, that many. So that means there's more people. And so when you look at the numbers of unemployment, you actually still have just more people who are unemployed. It's not less jobs being created. And so it's just this, it's kind of a weird place to be in because it looks really bad, but it's just because there's so many more people that are in that bucket, right?
And how often is it when they talk that we've created this many more jobs? Like how many are actually good paying jobs, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the other question. When they say, oh, unemployment's dropped, we've made 1,000 more jobs, et cetera. It's like, well, are they all in fast food chains or like, what are
not every job is made equal.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in different price ranges, so let's say under 5 to $1 million, over $1 million, what are you seeing with days on market, with what the market has been like over this last year?
Well, stuff under, I would say even under 700, it's still fairly small, not much inventory. So days on the market are pretty short, quickly snatched up. But again, I always go back to it. If it's done properly, like everyone thinks you can sell a home no matter what, but if it's not priced right, it's not done up right. Or if it doesn't look right, at least price it properly, right? So there's still homes that don't sell no matter what the market is if it's not at the right price. But yeah, anything under 700, I find that days on the market are definitely lower. Yeah.
Some of it's been so interesting too, because you're seeing some of these communities in the inner city, which are 50-foot lots, just be snatched up for land value. Like you think of
Which like what are some names?
So the Tri-Wood area, so Brentwood, Charleswood, Collingwood specifically, I'm thinking of where, land is getting like the house, probably a year or two ago would have sold in the 700s and now 700 to 800. And I know that house is just being knocked down to build potentially a $2 million house. One thing that I found super interesting is because the Northwest has never had a huge area of high-end homes. So like you're seeing more builders come in, knock the house down, pay, 700 or 800 for land and then rebuilding, which is kind of fascinating. I think that, I did inventory over in the Northwest because I had a client wanting to write an offer and how there was a 15-month inventory for homes over 2 million, which is like a different pocket altogether. But just the fact how many more homes, and a lot of these were newer homes or had ridden up with the market. So it's, we talk Calgary, and I know you talk Calgary in general so many times, but it's just like every little pocket just has its own little things. Like you couldn't even, I remember earlier this year when you couldn't even almost buy a house for 700,000. And I can think of a listing I have specifically where we're on at 625 and they were listed with a different realtor and they had an offer in July at 640. And now no one's even close to that. And so like, that's a little bit of a breath. So I think, this, after doing it for 20 years, this really reminds me of 2007 where prices went up very quickly and was very heated. And now we're just finding our new normal. And even with talking to local buyers, I don't know if you find this, but they are very unaware of even what their house is worth. Most of them think their house is worth way less. I mean, there's an extreme. They think it's worth way less. Than
it's either like, it's 1.3 or like, Paul, since June of this year, we have seen our benchmark price decrease every month, like month over month, not year over year. Year over year, we're still up. So that trend, do you think that's going to continue into 2025, like into the next spring, next summer, next fall, where we're going to just keep seeing it slowly decreasing? Or what do you think is going to happen?
I think it's really hard to say. I don't think it's going to dip too much. It may fluctuate a little bit. I think we're going to see a lot of ups and downs. Yeah. And it depends as well, like what's going to sell in that next month. If something high price sells, that may change the direction and stuff like that. But I think with the interest rates potentially dropping further, we're going to see more buyers come out. So I think it'll just flatline for a bit, and we're not going to see a big drop or a big jump.
And I think as prices and the market kind of having some more stability in Vancouver and Toronto and BC and Ontario, because there's still a lot of people who are wanting to move here and they just weren't able to. And so there's still those plans. Like I had a couple of calls already this week where it's just like, next summer we're planning on doing it. So let's, that kind of thing. And so it's almost this combination of more local people from the last 6 months who are now going, okay, I think let's do something.
Or their mortgage is about to renew.
That's right. Oh yeah, renewals coming up this year and next year. So there's a lot of those factors where there's the funnel of demand can kind of keep on pushing it, right? And keep it going.
Yeah.
Are homes still selling over asking, or are buyers able to negotiate more right now? Like I said, in the last 3 months, and what do you think will happen over the next 3 months?
I had some buyers write some really low offers last week.
Yes.
I think,
Like how much under?
well, I mean, it all is proportionate to the list price, but I would say even at a 600,000 price point, they wanted to go in. They thought the house was only worth 475. And so the thought is, even for buyers, like
Percentage wise, that's a very big.
yeah.
That's very aggressive.
And just to kind of have that conversation, like if the seller was interested in that type of price point, it's going to take a little bit longer. Like a week being on the market, the seller's probably not going to drop $125,000.
So what made the buyer believe it was worth that?
I think you're walking into it, and the house needed a lot of work. And so I think that every buyer, especially in a market like we are in, wants to be rewarded for work like that they're going to have to do.
Like sweat equity.
Sweat equity, yeah. I'm finding that, who's on the market right now? Most properties, don't you find, are vacant?
Yeah, actually, there is a lot.
So vacant properties. So either they're either going through a divorce. I've had a couple of those. Actually, 2 I can think of, like that I was representing the buyer and they were making offers on. And then in addition to new properties, right? Because let's be honest, before Christmas, which I mean we are today, or in New Year's, nobody really wants to show their house. It's the time it's the time everyone hosts at Christmas, and then they're reminded why they need to move.
Yeah, that's right.
So we need to do a mailer. House too small?
Except Canada Post isn't working.
Hopefully it is by the time it's going.
I think a lot of the vacant homes as well, I walked into a bunch and I asked the question to find out why or how long it's been vacant. And I found a lot have been, these people are actually out of province. They bought and they were looking just to gain on that, that drive of prices going up and stuff. Because a lot of them, especially in Ontario, they're so used to that. We can buy a home before the home's even built. I've made $150K, and they were thinking the same as here. And now they realized, it hasn't gone. So it's like, do I sell or do I rent? So that's what I've been running into with a lot of vacant homes.
Yeah.
How would someone potentially competitively price their property now compared to maybe when the spring market is starting to take off? How would you, what are you seeing, or what would you advise someone like that?
Yeah, I'm primarily working Northwest, and that particular area, obviously having a good understanding of what the market's doing right now. And I do feel like different districts in Calgary are performing differently. Like, for example, when I was looking at the numbers for the Northwest, last month we had more sales than new listings. So we're still that's only for detached homes. I wasn't looking at other products, but we're still in that environment where we're seeing inventory perhaps shrink. And I think looking right now at this time of year, it's like, are days on market trending up? Are they trending down? What are sellers getting in terms of a discount? Are we seeing multiple offers still? I'm still seeing that in certain areas of the city. So I'll be listing a property this week and we're going to get quite competitive in terms of price. But we're not going to overprice at the same time. We're still following all of our same protocols with preparing the home, staging the home, and we found what we'd call the sweet spot in terms of price. But we're still looking at a market where homes are selling quite quickly, and there's not that much inventory out there. So we're feeling really optimistic listing a property in the middle of December.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say, what kind of offers are being accepted over the next month or two? Is it going to be unconditional a lot of the time? Is it with conditions? What type of conditions? What type of timeline are you typically seeing in this market?
I think there was a very short window there where we were seeing a lot of unconditional offers. I feel
recently.
Yeah. Back in the spring, there was a kind of a 3-month period where things were just going crazy. Outside of that, I feel like we've kind of been fairly normal as far as seeing the standard on a detached, seeing the standard, financing home inspection condition. One thing I have noticed is that the time frame has shrunken quite a bit compared to what we used to do just even a year ago, 2 years ago. I think sellers are wanting buyers to kind of really push through that condition period a little quicker.
So what was it from to now?
I don't think it was unreasonable before that you get 2 full weeks
Yeah.
for conditions. Yeah, 10 business days. And right now, kind of 7 business days are max. I know on my listings, I'm like, nope, we're shortening that condition period. I don't want to be off the market that long.
I'm even seeing kind of if you can get 4 or 5 business days of condition period in there, it's being even way more favorable to a 7-day condition period. And I think one of the reasons behind that is it's preventing people from going back out and shopping for houses the next weekend. It fits it into that 1 week time frame. They can get it up and down quickly on the market, because every seller's worst nightmare is accepting a conditional offer and just having that conditional offer fall apart and have to go back to market.
Yeah. Well, and for what could appear to be no reason, like for the seller, because it's not the house, it's probably not their financing, yet it's financing that fell apart, right?
Having conditions, and everyone's pretty flexible. They know that lenders are taking a little longer to get back still. So I've been always stretching it for 10 business days, and I haven't had any kickback from that.
Yeah, I've had 2 weeks. I think one interesting thing is, and this is for sellers, they're always surprised at a financing condition. And the question is, well, I thought they were pre-approved. And you're like, yes, they were pre-approved, but not for your house particularly. And sometimes there's an appraisal needed or whatever. But yeah. And, local buyers, we both are, born and raised, or all of us are born and raised in Calgary. Is one of the things is if you're I'm sure you've had that conversation at a party when they're like, how's the market? And you're like, well, finally, buyers have some options and you could put conditions. They're like, oh my goodness, like who would write a offer without a home inspection? And you're like, everyone from Ontario.
Well, and for a couple of years, like you kind of had to.
I even did on ours. So we bought, we with no conditions.
Wow.
And we still needed financing.
Did it work out?
Oh yeah, I'm not hopeless. But like I like a lot of clients that were afraid of it. I'm like, you have to plan accordingly and make sure. For some reason, like yes, I'm pre-approved. I knew I had this much money coming here and all that. Or like just in case something were to kind of hit back and say, oh, there's a bump here and you're not going to get approved. Where can you go to make sure this happens? And so you have to reach out to family, parents, or whoever and say, hey, if I need a cosigner or whatever, this is worst case scenario. And it worked out, obviously. We didn't need anything like that. But yeah, you have to be, when you're in that kind of market, you had to do it if you found the home you wanted.
Yeah, which I think, not everybody has family members that can step in and help you buy a house. So it just put pressure on everybody to kind of, but then people are, have to react so quickly, right? And I mean, for a seller, it's a dream, right? Who doesn't want an unconditional offer?
Of course. The flexibility, I think, is key on either side. Because like if you're a buyer and you're trying to purchase and the seller needs it at a certain time, well, then maybe you can push the price down because you're getting into the home sooner than you wanted to. But if you're flexible and they don't know that, you can use that as a negotiating tactic as well.
Yeah. What are you finding for deposit sizes? Like, is there? I
Depends on-
remember so long ago it was like $2,500 for your deposit, and you're like, yes.
Yeah, no, it's never that low anymore, obviously. I think pretty standard if you're under 600, you're looking around a minimum 20.
Sometimes 10, like you
can get away, but I find a lot of pushback on that and saying, okay, we want a additional deposit after conditions. And it depends how long the closing date is as well.
Well, I think as agents, we started seeing bigger deposits than we've ever seen over the last 3 years. Because before you could probably get away with a 5, 10, 15. And then depending on the price range, if you're going, higher end, probably that 50 or whatever. But all of a sudden we were starting to see 50,000 deposits on just regular detached homes, like, cause it was unconditional or whatever. And so now there's like this skew of more like than what we've probably been normal to if you go back 10 years, right?
Well, and I think too, in other provinces, our deposits are relatively high. Like in Ontario, some of them are shocked with, coming up with on $1 million home, $50,000. That is a lot higher.
Oh, really?
And I think too, again, I always refer to people local as far as Calgary. Everyone is local if you live in Calgary, but people who've been here for, 5 plus years used to kind of our boom bust markets. And even them are like, because not most people don't have 50,000 just laying around, and being creative. Sometimes people have been looking for a year and a half, so they would rather see that $50,000 invested than just in a savings account. So I've had to navigate that as well.
Yeah. Where it's coming.
And sometimes I think in this market, you have a little bit more leeway of having a deposit, come within a week versus like unconditional offer and deposit, 50,000 must be in their account within 12 hours.
That's what a lot of Ontario clients have been shocked at with as well, is like why we have to give a deposit already.
Right.
Because I found, at least from what they told me, they don't have to give it until it's firm. And it makes sense at one point, because it's like if they walk away and there is conditions, like you have to return that anyway. So what's the point of doing all this extra paperwork and holding it in trust and all that kind of stuff? Like give it after everything's done.
Oh, interesting.
And it almost, I think at that time, it was like a way to put that house on hold and because once an offer is accepted by a seller, the buyer really has all the power, right? So, I mean, on a smaller condo, my seller accepted an offer, and then, there were a couple buyers waiting in the wings and even had sent a backup offer, but my seller's hands were tied. So just at least gives them some sort of security. I mean, it's security. We all look for false security.
Don't wait. What specific price points are you finding the competition more fierce than others?
I feel like price points are still competitive all over the board. It depends on the area. Like once again, Northwest Calgary is extremely competitive market. And I had a lot of buyers who were shopping, say, North Calgary. And unfortunately, they were hit with a hailstorm and those buyers switched gears. So I wonder if that's part of the reason why they kind of switched from the north, where you do get newer product up there, over to more of the older established Northwest area. That area was not hit by the hailstorm. And buyers right now don't want to be necessarily buying a house where they're trying to navigate an insurance claim while moving into the house. That's not even their insurance claim.
That is an interesting point that you bring up, because I've been looking at the numbers through that north central section
Where they got hit.
With hail, and the inventory, like months of inventory, are a lot higher in that pocket.
Really?
Yeah. So that Nolan Hill all the way across to Livingston, that north edge, Evanston, Coventry, all those areas are not moving in typical.
What's roughly the number range?
Like price point?
Months of inventory difference.
A lot of them have hit balanced or higher.
So they're kind of like a 3 to 4 versus a 1 point something.
Evanston right now is moving very slowly.
Really?
Yeah. So it's just an interesting.
Yeah, days on market has really shot up. Like I feel like it's 30, 40 days in that area. And then you switch over to Northwest Calgary and it's like 7 to 14 days.
Yeah.
Like it's a much quicker market, much quicker environment.
I haven't looked at that at all.
It's an interesting thing. And I think a lot of people, like I have 2 listings that are both in the hail affected areas, and all the other listings, and ours included, all say, insurance claim is in process or whatever it might be. And I do think there is something to that. I think people are like, I don't want to get involved in this. Yeah. Let's go look in Tuscany, or let's go look in Royal Oak, or someplace that, is still close to where they're looking, but isn't in that hail affected area. So it's funny that one storm can have that kind of impact short term, perhaps.
That's why real estate's so local.
Yeah.
Right? It's not only local to our city, but it's local to communities that are 5 minutes apart.
Yeah.
And what's happening over in one part of the city, 5 minutes to another area, it's completely different environment.
Yeah.
Do you think that shift is due to the damages and repairs that are still needing to be done on those homes and buyers being impatient, not wanting to wait? Or do you think it is perhaps that they're worried about it happening again in the future? What's kind of your feeling? I think
it's still fresh in their minds. So, hail can kind of hit any part of the city, right? I've seen it hit the south. I've seen it hit the northwest, but that's fresh in their minds. And so they're thinking, as a buyer psychology, is, well, maybe I don't want to deal with hail. Let's move over to the northwest, but we get hail over there too. Just happens to be right now in this moment.
Yeah. It's recency bias.
Yes.
Yeah. There was a long period there. Airdrie got hit a couple of years in a row with hailstorms, and
Yeah.
people are like, "I don't want to live in Airdrie because I don't want to be dealing with hail all the time." But then a hailstorm hits Northeast Calgary, and everyone's like, "Yeah, I'm fine with Airdrie. I don't want to be in Northeast Calgary." Like it is recency bias, and right now, like that storm, unfortunately, I don't know this for sure. I heard it's become like the most expensive natural disaster in Canada's history.
This last one?
The last hailstorm that we had.
Wow.
And so, like, I kind of understand, like, if that's on top of people's minds, I think a lot of people would be like, I don't really want to have to deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
This is Alberta, so.
and first impressions, right? You pull up
Yeah.
to a house, you get out of the car, you and your buyers are looking, and the light fixtures are shattered, the vinyl's all kind of tattered and looks like a war zone. Whereas you get kind of more into the Northwest, it's not all vinyl product. It's wood siding, it's stucco, it's more hail resistant material in that Northwest area.
So when I'm thinking through this damage in my mind is we almost have this opportunity for that, a missed opportunity. We're now going to have the opportunity for buyers to buy these houses that look like they're in a war zone, but are getting brand new siding, a brand new envelope on the house. And do you guys think as soon as the repairs start going through, we're going to start seeing buyers all of a sudden start running back to those areas because they realize the exterior of their house is brand new?
Yeah.
It's like they say about every relationship, time heals wounds, right? Yeah.
Time heals all vinyl.
I think for buyers, if they want to get a great deal right now and the market's not super competitive, North Calgary is a great spot.
Well, and there's insurance involved. It's going to take time and it's going to get fixed. Like that's
I move into a house that's 12, 15 years old with a new roof, new siding,
yeah.
new envelope, new deck.
You just have to deal with that. So in speaking about neighborhoods, what would you say are some of the safest neighborhoods in Calgary?
Calgary.
All of it. Great. With good amenities and good schools. Like what would you say are your top three if someone was to ask you that and they were totally open, good, decent budget, let's say 7, 8 kind of detached property? What would you throw to them?
Like to me, obviously, I would throw out Tuscany. It's a great neighborhood, great amenities, family friendly, good vibe there, and great schools. Crime rate, I don't know where crime rates are really. I haven't gauged that, but it feels like an area.
To be honest, like crime rate across Calgary is pretty much the same. Doesn't matter where you live.
I would think maybe just Beltline probably has a higher crime rate just because it's a higher density area.
Well, I think a big question with crime rate we often miss is what type of crime.
Oh yeah.
There's a huge difference between kids going to your convenience store and stealing a chocolate bar and a double homicide. Those are both reported as a single crime. However, two very different
pretty vital
neighborhoods I would choose.
If you're a kid who stole a chocolate bar and got caught, it's a pretty major deal.
Turns into a double homicide.
Good. The crime rate is one I struggle with because I get this question a lot, especially from people from Toronto. I feel like Toronto must be just falling apart or something, but like Calgary's crime, it doesn't even compare to some of these other major centers where people are moving from, like Vancouver and Toronto. So when people ask, well, is it a safe neighborhood? Well, Calgary, in a large part, is just a safe city. Yeah. There are areas that may be a little prone to violence more than others, but I think for the most part, it's pretty tough to be like, you should stay away from Aspen. It's got to be those rich people, I tell you.
And in any price point, you can find great solutions. Like, that's fair.
I think the lake communities have had such a draw for anyone coming outside of Alberta. I think they've always, if you're, we know Calgary is very divided. If you're in the north, you stay in the north. If you're in the south, you stay in the south. But the lake, the south has lake communities, and that gives a point of community for people that are moving here. Usually most of them have schools already, so they're very well established, which is positive for younger families.
Yeah.
I think anywhere close to the C train or downtown.
I think that's where the Northwest kind of ticks a lot of points for people because of proximity to university, hospitals, train.
Yeah, train, yeah.
Even downtown.
Right.
Like even if you go on the border of Calgary, which is, I guess, Tuscany and Rocky Ridge. The train's right there, and you're downtown. You have a few different options to get there, but you're downtown in like 20 minutes.
How do I choose between a new developed community versus something that's much more established?
It's a great question. I think it has a lot to do with your lifestyle. Do you want to, if you work downtown, a new community might not be a great spot for you. A lot of our new communities do not have quick access to downtown or even good transit infrastructure to get you down there in time.
Or schools.
Or schools.
Or playgrounds.
Or playgrounds.
Like a lot of our new communities do a good job with green spaces and pathway systems and stuff like that. But you're right. Like if you're a young family, that's what kept us out of a new community when we were looking 10 years ago was we have kids. They need to go to school. We want to at least have a school close by that they can go to. So I really do think that's a individual's kind of decision, what they need to make, what's important to them.
I think it comes down to lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like you're touching on there, it's what lifestyle do you have? Are you going to spend any time outside of your house, or is your whole day going to be spent inside? Because if you're wanting to get out to the playgrounds, wanting to get to the schools, a new neighborhood might not be right for you because it may be years before you get those amenities. But if you're wanting that brand new, shiny, never been touched, never been lived in new car product, and you're willing to sacrifice the development of the neighborhood, that new community might be the right fit for you.
Well, it's funny. I, dealing with a lot of people from Toronto and Vancouver, and they all want to kind of, I find they do gravitate towards the newer neighborhoods. And part of that reason is, I don't want to have to deal with maintenance. I don't know anybody here. I want a new house where I get the security of a warranty. And they understand that it's a further commute, now instead of 20 minutes to downtown, it might be 30 minutes. But in comparison to the commute that they're coming from, that was an hour and a half one way, 30, 40 minutes is a dream.
That's true.
So, you are seeing a lot of the newer people move to perhaps some of the newer neighborhoods just because they get that new house. They get the security of a home warranty. They're not going to have to do any maintenance, hopefully, for maybe the first 10, 15 years.
So here's a side question when you're talking about new neighborhoods. Are you worried about the number of new builds that could be coming to the market over the next year or two that have never been lived in and people bought 3 years ago and never planned on living in it, but they're not going to rent it either. They're just going to put it on the market.
This is an interesting thing that I think we saw a lot of over the last 2 years is people from out of province being like, well, I want to buy a property and then before it's finished, I want to sell it. And I guess that happens commonly in other jurisdictions like Ontario or BC maybe. But I think it was a little bit of a, you can't do that here? Realization for a lot of people.
And you can, but it's really
difficult. I had a conversation with somebody this morning on the phone who wanted to do that and I went through the options and he's like, it's a lot harder to do that there. What's this? Developers might have a first right of refusal, untitled. Like there's a lot of factors to weigh in with that. So it is interesting. I do think, I don't know if you guys have experienced this. I've gotten a couple of calls already from people who I bought a house or I bought a condo. I'm not coming out there and now I need to sell it. I do think we're going to see that happening here in the next little while.
I have seen it this year. I have a client, they've never been to Calgary. They bought 2 properties out in Chestermere and they were kind of looking to do the assignment protocols like they are used to in Toronto and Vancouver. And we just don't really have the framework here to properly assist or move assignment sales. Mm-hmm. And yes, there was a lot of red tape on the builder's contract that went along with this assignment sale, where they would take a huge chunk of that money from that sale. So they weren't able to successfully, weren't successfully able to do this assignment.
So with that number of potential inventory or that new type of inventory coming to the market, like a lot more new homes, it's going to be something interesting to watch. Like how many never lived in homes are active compared to resale homes? Because I think we could probably start seeing that shooting up over the next shortly, if not as they come completed over the next 2 years, right? So is that going to be an opportunity for people, or is it going to, who could it be an opportunity for, and who's it going to be a disadvantage to?
I think the opportunity for, if we see it continue, is the out of province buyer would ideally fit that mold of a buyer who would consider that opportunity. If we don't get that immigration that we're thinking we're going to get that next year, that seller could be having to reconsider where they're listed at, adjust that price, and hope that a local comes in and buys it.
Yeah. Well, and it could sway a lot of people to actually start buying in new communities if that type of product is more readily available to them. And they're like, you know what? I'm fine with commute. I'm fine with lack of amenities. I'm fine with X, Y, Z, whatever those things are. All of a sudden, it's just like, yeah, but I can get this house for that price. Where last year, I could not have, right? And so I do wonder if it'll be not a downward pressure in price, but definitely a stabilizing factor for certain communities. Because there are some communities that I've heard, and I'm not going to name names necessarily, but there
should name names.
All of them. But I have heard that there are some communities where majority of the homes bought in that community from builders are investors who are never going to move in there. So as soon as certain communities have this flow of inventory, like that could actually skew someone's perception on what they want to do, right?
I think we're seeing that right now in areas.
Probably.
I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
I'll name names. I see it in Chestermere.
Right.
There's a lot of inventory out there, and a lot of people who have purchased out there had no intention to move. Builders were offering great deals, great incentives.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see a lot more inventory in that
Pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'm going to give you 4 scenarios, 4 different types of buyers, price ranges, and what are the first handful of communities that come to mind that would be great for them to live in. So first one is first-time buyers, and their budget's under $400, whether a single couple, whatever it is. What comes to mind?
Seton. Seton pops into mind for me. There's a lot of new builds that I find a lot of first-time home buyers are interested in, whether it's slightly larger apartments or even the ability to get into the townhouse.
No.
I'm going to say Coventry Hills. I think it's a great area for young families, young couples. It's affordable and it's easy to get around the city in that area. If you're a first-time buyer, a family of kids, it's got great schools, lots of amenities close by, shopping. It's just a really easy, accessible neighborhood to get around the city.
Under 400?
Townhomes under 400.
Okay.
And they have Country Village.
Yeah, I was just going to say Country Village. So there's townhomes, apartments, maybe not quite under 400. I'm going to say 4 to 450. It's close. So I think it depends on that type of client and what stage of life they're in. If it's a family first time looking, that's a great first time buyer neighborhood.
Yeah. And that's more established. Yours is more new. What would you say?
Yeah, it really depends on the product. If you're looking for something that's not a condo, there's not a ton under 4. Some of the older areas, even older than Coventry, like Beddington, Thorncliffe, like areas like that have townhouses, semi-detached properties that maybe you can find in that price range. But I think largely you're looking at condos if you're under 400,000 at the moment. And we have a lot of those all over the city at the moment. So,
because you could also get into the Northeast in certain pockets for townhomes, at least, in the 3s for sure. High 3s, yeah. But there's definitely that kind of pocket too. Any of the surrounding areas would be worth considering?
It depends how far out you want to go. I know Airdrie and Okotoks are both flying pretty good right now. But if you went a little further north to Crossfield, I think there's opportunities there. Again, probably not going to find a house for 400 or under, but you might find a duplex or something like that out there.
Okay, what about a move-up buyer? So someone who has that property that is like 5 to 7, and they're willing to go or wanting to go up to like a 8 to a million range, 8 to 9. What would be, they have a young family, willing to change schools. What would be some top neighborhoods?
Tuscany.
Yeah. Tuscany is nice in the Northwest. I think then you're going to go back again into the southeast communities where the lake communities are.
Yeah.
I think lifestyle is so key. I am a big proponent to like, buying a house. And so then you can live and work in like a 15-minute radius. If you have the ability to work from home, or say you're teaching out in Cochrane or RCMP live out there, or Okotoks, like that's kind of maybe a little bit of a quieter feel for some of those communities.
I'd say Edgemont, Dalhousie in the Northwest. If I'm considering Southeast, I'd say a Sundance. They're all kind of similar in terms of what they offer for schools, age of home, Mackenzie Lake, those kind of older, more established areas. Usually I'm finding for a lot of move-up buyers, and I was a move-up buyer, the highest priority was, well, how far is the school? What school is there? To just get that commute time down a little bit more.
I find also too, a lot of move up people, they're buying when their kids are kind of in grade 1 or 2. So they're sometimes open to changing schools. So it's like, but once they get into grade 4, 5, 6, it's like, no, we're not changing. I know I wouldn't necessarily change our girls, right? So that's kind of something that's interesting too. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I was kind of going along the same lines as you there, of kind of those more established neighborhoods, because that's where you're going to be finding the schools, where you're going to be finding things. And top of my mind, I initially thought Signal Hill. Signal Hill and surrounding areas, close to a lot of great schools. We're finding homes in those price points that we'd be looking for that move-up family, where they may actually even get a little extra yard than they're expecting.
That's kind of that like 80s, 90s neighborhood. I find as soon as you creep down into like the 60s, 70s, more inner city, like a Charleswood, Collingwood, Brentwood, the price is going to go up. You do get bigger lot, but the price tag will definitely go up a little bit higher. You get a little bit less home, more lot, better location.
Yeah. It's an interesting question again, because there's so much diversity in the communities and the opportunities. I'm going to go a different way than you guys did. I'm going to say Auburn Bay. I like Auburn Bay. I confess it all the time. It's one of my favorite communities in Calgary because of, you've got the lake, you've got schools now, even though some of them are full, or a couple of them are full already.
Full all over the city.
Yeah, that's true. We're facing a bit of a problem here, but I think it's got every product that you need. If starter homes, and this question specific to 800 plus, they have those too. Nice homes. They're not too old, so if you're worried about maintenance and that kind of thing, hopefully it's not an issue. But I really like the feel of it. I know it's a little bit a ways from downtown, but it's quick access to the ring road and freeways to get around. And I just really like the feel of the community.
So what about someone downsizing? So they are kind of making that change. I mean, their budget could vary, 6, 8, 9, whatever it might be, or even $1 million. But what are some top areas for someone who's kind of downsizing? Really, it's not necessarily price-wise people downsize. It's much more like just to a different style of property, right?
Downsizing is always tricky because sometimes I would always say if a couple, like I had 2 clients this year, they lived in both 2,600 square foot homes. And then they're like, and now we're going to live in a 700 square foot condo. And I was just like, do you like each other that much? So the interesting thing, if you're talking about a downsizer, if it's a couple, they're retired, they're likely to be in that space. Like they're likely both to be at home. Some of it's and so being in 700 square feet, no matter how much you love your person, it could seem small. So, but I mean, Calgary, we're used to space. I think that there's some really good condo auctions. Like you look at University District, I think Spruce Cliff, where, there's some great options. I think any time you can walk to some areas or there's some gyms, like there's a lot. I mean, I would go back to South Calgary, and Mahogany has been a huge one that people have gone because their kids are in some of those larger houses. And then you have lake access and they're safe, right? No one's, there's not a lot of people that are, overdosing in Mahogany. They can't get there. Yeah. I say that respectfully, but it just has a different feel than living in East Village.
Yeah.
When I think of downsizing, I think villas. And
that's where I was going to go.
Oh, sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
it's all right.
I'll let you go.
I think, well, and if we're going to both say villas, I think the advantage for a lot of people who are maybe empty nesters, downsizing, they're not dealing with kids or commute, their priorities kind of shift towards, well, let's travel. What's kind of lock and key? And a villa's kind of the best of both worlds when I don't want to live in an apartment because it's shared living and shared accommodation, but I want to live in a villa where the landscaping's taken care of, the snow removal's taken care of. I can lock up and leave for 6 months and not have to worry about maintaining this property while I'm gone.
So where would you say it's good to find some of those?
I've seen, if we're looking northwest, Edgemont, there's some great ones in there. Some of them can be 50 plus, 60 plus complexes. If your budget's a little bit higher, Heritage Point has been great. I've had a lot of older clientele in that retired stage of life go there. Watermark, of course, price point's a little bit higher, but really well maintained properties, really well built.
Yeah.
And all single living, right? So we got the 1 bedroom up and then walkout basement, maybe 2 bedrooms down there. So it's perfect for those empty nesters who still want guest space.
Yeah. There's some good complexes that aren't part of a strata or condo association in Kincora, Hamptons, Douglasdale. Kind of the more maybe mature areas than you'd normally think, maybe the exception being Kincora. But you can find a lot of options that are like the semi-detached, no condo fee, villa style in those areas.
Yeah, cool. Now, final category, it's like Jeopardy, is the relocating to Calgary. So I don't know a lot of locations. I never visited any. And it's going to be hard for me to get out to see them. But I have a budget of, let's say, $850, $950, but I could push to 1.2 depending on what my house sells for. You hear that all the time. But they could go up to that low million mark. What would you suggest are some of the top places that they should kind of consider? Or what questions do you have for them that they need to answer?
Well, questions for them would be, what are your priorities? Like, do you have young kids, or you want good schools? You want to be close to downtown? Like, those are questions that I think we all answer when we're initially talking to people. But when I think of communities that fit that, it's I like West Springs. I think that's one of my other favorite communities, along with Auburn Bay. But West Springs has everything. It's got all the amenities now, restaurants and everything, groceries. It's quick access to downtown. It's nice homes, great schools. A lot of private schools over there as well. So it kind of checks all the boxes.
To me, this is where I jump down to Alex's favorite neighborhood. Back down to the newer lake communities down in the south. So your Auburn Bay, your Mahogany's, where that 30, 40-minute commute to downtown for those needing to commute still isn't a long commute to a lot of these people relocating here.
Yeah.
You're finding, like you said, all the amenities. You're getting access to all the schools down there, the hospitals down there. Everything you need. The world's largest YMCA is down there.
Boom.
I mean, it all depends. I find, like, I've chatted with a couple of people from Ontario, and they're actually quite surprised how small our lots are and how, developers have made these communities where sometimes you're staring right into your neighbor's yard. And so Mackenzie Lake has kind of come up because, again, it's a lake community, but you have bigger lots. The tricky thing is finding people still want you. If they're moving here, I find them even more particular about living in a newer house because the move across Canada is so big. Yeah. And then to undergo renos is just too much.
What are the most common mistakes that you are seeing buyers or sellers making in this market that you want to try to position your clients to avoid in this next year?
To me, for buyers, it's the same thing as we always see. It's the not having a pre-approval, not knowing where the money's going to come from when you start shopping and just thinking everything's going to be okay. And then as far as sellers go, I would say it's not having a plan as to where they're going to go. Even though our market has slowed slightly, you'd still need to know what you're going to do and where you're going to go before you get that house up on the market or pursue getting it up on the market.
I find for sellers, there's a lot of people that I've talked with lately still think that their value is where it was back in the spring. And they haven't really adjusted their expectations as far as selling their house. And maybe the price that they think they could get back then is what they think they can get now. And so I think I mean, the biggest thing is make sure you're prepared, do your research, make sure you have a plan for selling your house, and that you're using somebody that has a plan to sell your house. And I just, because this is so common, I really have to echo what Paul just said. It just seems like house buying sneaks up on people a lot, and they're not doing the preparation steps to get ready to sell, to get the pre-approval, to even know where they want to be necessarily. They just end up finding something and kind of jumping after it.
Almost responding to their urge versus
Be more proactive, less reactive.
I think a lot of buyers perhaps overlook the additional costs of home ownership. So just besides the mortgage, you have taxes, you have insurance, you have home maintenance, utilities, groceries, everything in this environment right now in terms of being at, high prices, high interest rate. You have to take the full scope of a budget into consideration when buying a house. Because it's not just the mortgage. There's a lot of other costs that go beyond the mortgage. So for buyers having a better understanding of what those additional costs look like and feeling more comfortable with, okay, this is what our monthly budget's going to look like. This is where pre-approval does come in play, where it's like, okay, this is what our mortgage is going to look like at this price range. But taxes are here, insurance are here, utilities are here. Are you comfortable with the full scope of home ownership in terms of the cost?
Buyers are always like excited, and I get it. They're excited. They want to go out, find the home, but they never want to take the time to prep for it. So just actually talk. Go talk to your bank. Make sure you can get pre-approved, but have the option. Talk to a mortgage broker. They'll give you way more options. Just be pre-approved, because then you know what you're working with. And then don't go to your ceiling budget. You're approved for 800. You don't have to look at 800. I'm sure we can find you a nice home at 720. Don't stretch your budget so hard.
What's the reason for that?
Well, because you don't know what the market's going to do. You don't know what life's going to bring, right? So all of a sudden, one of your spouse loses their job, and all of a sudden it's on off of one income. It's can we afford this? You still don't. You don't want to be house poor. They always say don't be house poor. You still want to go on vacations. If you need to fix a car that's breaking down, you can do it. You don't want to be counting every penny you spend. Where if you hit that budget, that max budget, you're going to be tight. A little change, all of a sudden you're 2 months, 3 months later, you're feeling it.
Yeah. Can I just add to that? I think one thing I see a lot of buyers get hung up on is their interest rate when they get a pre-approval, or how much they've been approved for, which is important. But I think the number one thing they need to know is, what am I okay paying? Because often the bank can give you a lot more money than you're going to be comfortable with actually making payments on.
So if you want to know more about neighborhoods in Calgary, where things are at, what are some of the best ones to consider, well, jump up here and we'll see you over there.